Hey guys, welcome to Solo ReacTalk. Today I'm going to be reacting to the true story of how World War II began between two wars, 1939 part 3 of 3 by TimeGhost History. Guys, if you want to check out my previous reactions to the other episodes in the TimeGhost Histories Between Two Wars episodes, remember the playlist card is going to be at the top here. Just click on it and you'll be able to access them. If you want to check out the original videos, video as well as TimeGhost Histories YouTube channel, the links are in the description below. Yes, this is the last video. This is video number 58 in the playlist. We have reached the end. And after this, I've been given an option by Aaron Horn to react to the American Civil War. But I've also pledged myself that I'm going to target Anna Deinhardt's Homefront playlist on the, what was it called again? World War II channel. Yes. So I might do both on the same day on every Tuesday, or I might stick with one. So I guess you guys will just have to wait and see what I do. But it's between these two options, either the American Civil War or continuing on with Anna Deinhardt with the home front for World War II. Yeah. So next week, you'll see my decision by next week. Okay, let's start. 3, 2, 1, go.
Is the world ready for war here in 1939? Is it ready for war at any time? Is it even something we can be ready for?
Never. You can have the best prepared army, the best fleets, the best army, the best at everything. You can think and believe that you are prepared. But once it begins and once it ends, you will realize that no matter how prepared you were just not ready for what was to come. Yeah.
Some people think so, and they make it into a plan, a path forward based on careful consideration and calculation. But as journalist Rebecca West said in 1937 to World War I veteran and military historian Captain Liddell Hart, before a war, military science seems like a real science, like astronomy. But after a war, it seems more like astrology, to which Hart replied, perhaps that last conclusion is rather hard on astrology. Welcome to the final episode of Season 1 of Between Two Wars, a chronological summary of the interwar years covering all facets of life, the uncertainty, hedonism, and euphoria, and ultimately humanity's descent into the darkness of the Second World War. I'm Indy Nidell. So, here we are on August 31st, 1939, almost 21 years after the end of the Great War. Long gone is the optimism and hope that armistice brought in November 1918, the golden future promised by the economic boom of the second half of the 1920s, the elation at the emancipation of nationalities, ethnicities, and women across the world, the promise of progress by inventions like airplanes, ubiquitous telephony, toasters, a car for every man, radio, and even the beginnings of television that will make life easier, more fun, and bring us closer together. These dreams of a brave new world now seem like distant fever hallucinations. What is left is just the fever of war itself that has never really gone away. The heightened temperature from the Russian Civil War and the Bolshevik attempt to subjugate the nascent nations in Eastern Europe, the raging fires of civil war in China, Japanese violent colonial expansion, and the hot heat of the European colonial empires pressing down on their indigenous subjects, the incessant beat of the pulse that drums a threat of communist revolution, the aches and pains of coups, and the collapse of one after the other of the new democracies, the rise of Nazism, fascism, communism, and socialism as it was originally defined, with their absolute disdain for the sanctity of human life, the delirious chauvinism and outrage at perceived injustices by German neo-imperialists with renewed Teutonic blustering threat.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Indy. No matter how far we advance, we can't seem to escape our desires to dominate over others, whether it's through ideals or whether it's through economic output or conquest, we can't seem to get away from wanting to conquer, to destroy, to wage war. And we always find excuses. We always find reasons why we need to do this, why we need to kill so many people, why we need to destroy so many settlements, why we need to crush our neighbors into submission. We always make reasons. It's something that's always going to be with us, I think, waging war against one another. No matter how far we advance, even if we go to other solar systems in the galaxy, once we start colonizing other star systems, we're still going to be fighting against each other. I just don't see us having this utopian, peaceful coexistence with one another. There's always going to be a reason for humanity to fight against itself. Yeah. If we don't have a competitor out there in space, we will make our own. And that's usually ourselves. Yeah.
Finally, occupation. A world tearing itself apart into a multitude of us and them states. A world organism whose cells fight against each other for the future while its temperature grows ever hotter. A world infected by suspicion, greed, self-righteousness, hatred, and bloodlust. And to us here in 2020, it might look like tomorrow, September 1st, is a shocking, sudden collapse that takes the world by surprise, but that is far from the truth. The whispers of a coming war have been circulating for months, even years by now. It's more like a giant storm gathering on the horizon than the unpredicted devastation of an earthquake. Perhaps a more timely comparison in 2020 is a long series of epidemics that are now about to explode into a virulent pandemic of destruction.
Yeah, I agree. This was a storm that was seen coming for a very long time. Many people did not believe it. Many people did believe it, but they just decided, okay, this is how things are. This is what's going to happen. So what can we do? And others, they tried to prepare themselves for the worst. They kept themselves in their bunkers. I'm saying metaphorically. I'm not saying literally, but they tried to prepare their economies and their society for what may potentially come. Others, they could not do anything because, their society, or should I say the people of their country, were not interested in wars. They were not interested in invading other countries. They weren't interested in defending, other countries with their taxpayer money, with their economies, with their young men being sent off to these foreign places. And, it was a difficulty. But this storm was coming, slowly but surely. And it covered the horizon, It just kept on coming slowly and crept up on them. And, by the time it reached landfall, if I can say that, it completely obliterated all people's notion of thinking that this war was never going to touch them. One way or another, this World War II touched them. And it changed the course of the planet forever, I think.
5 regimes, their leaders and their followers, have been the main ones seeding this infection for years now. They are Chiang Kai-shek and Mao Zedong in the ideologically divided China, Emperor Hirohito and his generals in Imperial Japan, Joseph Stalin in the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, Benito Mussolini in Fascist Italy, and Adolf Hitler in the Nazi German Reich. Chiang and Mao have torn China, the most populous country in the world, apart, repeatedly throwing the nation into ideologically driven civil wars, an opportunity that the Japanese emperor and his warlords, hell-bent on domination over all of Eastern Asia, have seized upon to occupy Manchuria and then to invade China and conquer further territory. After the failures of the Russian Bolsheviks to reestablish the borders of the Russian Empire for the Soviet Union, Joseph Stalin has consolidated his personal power and is now the de facto totalitarian dictator of one of the resource-richest countries with the largest landmass on the planet. He is in ruthless, murderous control of a federation of states that he has violently turned from an agrarian 19th century economy into an inhumane juggernaut of industry designed to turn out endless war machinery. Today, August 31st, 1939, his eyes are once again set on his old goal of recreating a socialist version of the Tsarist Empire. Mussolini has bullied and blustered his way into dominion over the central portion of the Mediterranean Sea, awakening the old colonial strife in Africa. Events that have once and for all defeated the attempts of world leaders to establish international checks and balances to prevent another world war after the war to end all wars. Hitler, now totalitarian dictator of one of the richest, most advanced countries in the world, has based his whole ideology on murderous racial and political violence, and a war of conquest to create Lebensraum for the German people. He has meticulously and systematically rearmed the Reich, priming its population for war while lying that he wants peace, stoking the fires of hatred and screaming his unfounded and baseless outrage from the Nazi bully pulpit. He has by now driven the German economy into a frenzy of overspending that leaves them with no option other than conquest to keep from going off a cliff. And what do the old mighty Western powers, who could offer real opposition to all of this, do while the tyrants whip the dogs of war into a frenzy? The simple answer is that they're busy staring into their own navels. The more complex answer is that even if they wanted to, they are facing fantastic hurdles to do anything. In under 20 years, the US, Great Britain, France, many of the Commonwealth countries, several Latin American nations, Scandinavia, Benelux, and Czechoslovakia have emerged from proto-democratic patriarchic societies and have begun establishing themselves as modern universal democracies. Led by the effort to disarm by the United States, they have chosen a path towards peace, a path that most of their democratic constituents want them to stay on. And the economic roller coaster ending in the 1929 Wall Street crash and the worldwide depression that followed has pummeled them into a recovery effort that keeps them busy with their own problems. Now, inside these nascent universal democracies, there is still a great deal of injustice. Emancipation, fiscal parity, the equal treatment and opportunity for minorities and women are still far away. But they have taken giant leaps to promote modernity, equality, and democracy in their own lands. At the same time, however, they have failed to let go of their dominion over a gigantic majority of the people who still live under the yoke of exploitation and subservience in their colonies. In Africa, Middle East, Southeast Asia, the Pacific, India, Great Britain, France, the Netherlands, and the United States have been reluctant or have even refused to allow these people's entry into the modern world and sovereignty over their own lives.
As you see, even before the beginning of World War II, there were already wars before that. Small wars. Sometimes it would be freedom-fighting wars. There'd be idealistic type of wars, like, for instance, what was been happening in Spain with their civil war. There'll be wars for liberation. There'll be wars for emancipation. There'll be wars for human rights, wars for universal suffrage. All of these little wars all add up to something. It might not lead up to World War II, but they add up to something else that will have an end result in the end. This world has continued to churn and to evolve even before World War II. Even before then, there were other smaller wars that also contributed to different changes that have led up to our present day. Very important as well.
It's for economic reasons, because of lingering chauvinism and racism, and perhaps to hold on to one last straw of military dominance in a world of ever-increasing threats. And these threats have not just come from outside, but from ideological forces from within. On the extreme left, socialists and communists, on the extreme right, reactionaries and fascists have repeatedly threatened to topple the fragile state of increasing democracy, order, lawfulness, and equality. Some of the countries that came into the fold of democracy in the years after World War I have fallen to these forces. Germany, perhaps chief among them. In South America, many countries are vacillating between democracy and left-wing or right-wing autocracy. In Europe, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Hungary, Romania, Yugoslavia, Greece, and Bulgaria are by now autocracies that are ripe to become pawns or prey in the game of the great new tyrants. So in the end, it is up to the democratic nations to provide a real bulwark against renewed expansionist wars in Europe. But with aspirations to peace, global opposition to foreign involvement, and war in general by ordinary people, these democracies have failed to build adequate protections in case of renewed armed conflict. Well, at least at first they did. But gradually, the events in China and Hitler's vocal rise have raised alarms and caused at least a debate about rearming. Before that debate turns into action, it is already too late, however. It is only when the efforts to appease Hitler become a clear failure as he invades and annexes all of Czechia earlier this year that a defensive rearmament effort really picks up speed, as does the awareness that war is coming, like it or not. From the moment that the Wehrmacht moves in across the Czech border in March 1939, the news across the world is dominated by speculation of a new European war, even a new world war. The June 12th issue of Time magazine in the US becomes the first to use the terms World War I and World War II with Roman numerals. So already before it arrives, it carries the ominous moniker of a Second World War. It addresses the fears now driving rearmament specifically. The only reason that so much of the world's hard-earned wealth is poured down an uneconomic rat hole is that men expect and fear the coming of a Second World War. That expectation and fear is the greatest political force in the world today. Horror of the war itself makes mankind recoil towards peace, but the probable nature of the war and the fear of its outcome drive men to prepare for it. The Time article, Europe, War Machines, is a military analysis of how ready the armies of the world are for a war. It opens with a dire analysis. In 1933, the last effective year of the Versailles League of Nations system, the world's armies numbered 7 million men. Its navies totaled 3 million tons. Its military planes were 14,000, and $4 billion was spent to keep the men and machines of war. Pacifists considered these figures pretty horrible. As it turns out, they were small potatoes. In 1938, the year of Munich, armies had increased to 10 million men. Naval tonnage had jumped to 8 million. Military planes had possibly trebled in number, and $17 billion went slithering down the gullet of the hungry god of war to be.
And when you consider that, these numbers are, they are puny compared to what is happening in our present day in terms of how many countries spend a portion of their GDP directed to the military, and how many men and women are in the service of their military, how many ships they have on the seas, how many aircraft they can have in the air, and how many types of advanced warfare suites they can use in whatever field of battle. That 17 billion is nothing. It's nothing nowadays. It's puny. Yeah. Well, considering for like the top 10 military powers in the world, that 17 billion is nothing, really. For the rest of the world, yeah, you could consider that still be a lot of money, especially spending it on a military, when primarily we should be focusing on our society and reconstruction and development of our society. So that type of money, it is obscene to use such money on your military. Yeah.
This year, with Russia leading the big parade, USSR war budget for 1939 is $8 billion. These figures are again skyrocketing. The article then goes into a deep analysis of how prepared the forces of the world are. A force and capacity count indicates the Axis already have a significant advantage in Europe, both in force and equipment. The only way for Britain and France to avoid initial defeat and have time to even that out is if the Soviet Union or the US join the Allies. a war involving the East, with Japan and China pulled in as well, would require both the US and the Soviets as allies to create an even fight. But with the ideological enmity between the Soviets and the Nazis, that should be in the cards, right? After all, the tyrants have formed two blocs in stark opposition to each other, with the outright purpose of seeking resolution through conflict.
A surprise is coming.
In the past 3 years, Hitler, Hirohito, and Mussolini have formed the Anti-Comintern Pact, an ideological alliance aimed to oppose Stalin, Mao, and their followers' attempts at establishing socialism and communism as international ideologies of rule. Hungary and fascist Spain have joined the pact this year. Chang is caught in the middle, dependent on Mao's cooperation and Stalin's support to fight off the Japanese aggression. Ideologically opposed to both of them, he also courts and gains German support for his war against Germany's own ally. This is not the only conflict that these powers support. In fact, they make an effort to seed conflict all over the world. Stalin supports and aids socialist and communist revolutionaries in nations around the globe. Fascist parties seek and get Hitler's and Mussolini's support, both ideologically and practically. In Spain, the forces supplied on one side by Stalin and the other by Hitler and Mussolini escalate that conflict into a more violent, bloodier, deadlier, and longer conflict than it would have been otherwise. In this microcosm, the world looks on with horror as modern war is put on display in all of its foul glory. Based on the apparently clear delineations between left-wing and right-wing forces in the proxy war that is the Spanish Civil War, it's easy to fall into a trap of thinking that a coming conflagration will be first and foremost ideological. But it is the pragmatic alliance between Mao and Chiang and Hitler's support of an enemy of Japan that are the true signs of the times. First and foremost comes the goals of domination and expansion, and only second comes the ideological war. This was clearer than ever a few days ago when Stalin and Hitler shocked the world by entering into a non-aggression pact and a secret alliance to carve up Central and Eastern Europe, despite their oft-repeated, propagandized hatred for each other and their opposed ideologies. Like with Mao and Chiang, there is no doubt that this is a temporary solution, an unholy alliance that must eventually collapse into a final showdown between the two parties. Nevertheless, there it is. Two of the world's mightiest war machines can proceed with territorial expansionism without fear of each other, at least for now. But before that can happen, Stalin needs to settle some unfinished business in East Asia, and that he does today. The Soviets and Mongolia are allied there in a de facto undeclared border war with the Japanese Kwangtung Army in occupied Manchuria, now Manchukuo. The conflict has been brewing since 1932, and in the last 4 years, it has steadily escalated into outright war. In July, the Kwangtung Army tries to break the stalemate by attacking across the river Kalk, Khalkhin-Gol in Mongolian. Here, they encounter the defenses led by the newly appointed Red Army commander, Georgy Zhukov. He has been holding back the Japanese for almost 2 months, requesting reinforcements to strike back. Now that Stalin has signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, the forces engaged in East Asia are a ball and chain that he needs to free himself of to concentrate on Europe. Zhukov gets his reinforcements, and in the first application of Red Army deep operations, Soviet Blitzkrieg, he achieves a decisive victory today, August 31st, just in time for Stalin. Today is also the culmination of a massive buildup of German forces on the borders of Poland, supported by Slovakian auxiliary divisions on the southern end. In the west, Wehrmacht reserves have taken up defensive positions on the French, Swiss, and Benelux borders. For weeks, the German state-controlled press has been full of fake news about Polish mass murder of ethnic Germans, border incursions, and violations of sovereignty. The German people believe it is they who are under attack. At 8 p.m. in Hotel Haus Oberschlesien, in the small town of Gleiwitz on the German-Polish border, German SS Sturmbannführer Alfred Naujoks gets a phone call. The voice on the other end says only one thing: grandmother is dead. This is the code word that sends Naujoks into the night to orchestrate the beginning of World War II.
So from those words, grandmother is dead, began this entire calamity. Grandmother is dead. Wow.
He and his accomplices take over the Gliwice radio relay station and repeatedly broadcast the following message in German and Polish. Achtung, Achtung, this is Gliwice. The station is under Polish control. The hour of freedom has arrived. For 4 minutes, they then call for Polish militants to rise up against Germany and end with, "Long live Poland." And with these lies, these cynical words, the German war machinery is finally set in motion. 21 years after the tide turned on Germany in the Great War, the Germans will have their revenge. For the world, it has been a roller coaster ride of boom and bust, love and hate, rebirth and death. The map of the world has been redrawn over and over again in attempts to placate desires for national sovereignty, ethnic rights, and fair economic opportunity, to shift the forces of mankind away from destruction towards development. In 1918, much of humanity emerged out of the fog of global war into a dawn of new promises for democracy, equal opportunity, technological development, prosperity, and freedom. By now in 1939, that hope has faded under the pressure of the ideologies of chauvinism, demagoguery, division, and death. 2 decades in a world of paranoia, conspiracy theories, self-righteousness, and jingoism. 20 years when the rhetoric of hatred has fanned the flames of war, and now that fire will be the only guiding light for humanity as the world descends into the darkness of the Second World War.
Yikes. Yes, guys, that's it with the true story of how World War II began between two wars, 1939, part 3 of 3 by TimeGhost History. You know, it is forbidden to kill, right? It is forbidden to kill, and that is why people who kill are punished. They're sent to a court, they are jailed. But when you kill in large numbers, and when you kill in large numbers with the sounds of trumpets and victory songs, all of a sudden it's not the same anymore. Killing is no longer forbidden. You know, killing is now given this notion of responsibility, of protection, of giving you carte blanche to do whatever means necessary to protect your people and your nation. And that's essentially what war is about, I would say, you know. And only the dead know the true end of war, not the rest of us who are still alive. We will still be fighting other wars. Once this World War is over, there'll still be another war 20 years down the line. there'll still be another war after that, another 30, 40 years down the line, if you're still alive, you know? Only the dead will truly know peace. The rest of us will continue to be fighting wars for the foreseeable future. It can be in our own countries, it can be international, it can be continental wars, it can be international wars. You know, we'll just be dragged into these things that men and women in power have started. And like I said before, humanity, I don't think we will ever escape this this need, you know, for conflict. I don't think we'll ever get away from it, no matter how far or how advanced we become. Even if we were to travel to other solar systems, I think this is still going to be with us, and we'll always find reasons for wanting to go to war. And yeah, here's World War II. Has begun, and a lot of people are going to die. A lot of people are going to die. Not just soldiers, but mainly civilians. A lot of people. And yeah, guys. Well, guys, that's it. Thank you to all of you for staying for the past 58 videos of TimeGhost Histories Between Two Wars. It's been enjoyable, you know, listening to Indian Idol and, you know, all of the stories of the different countries, the different people, you know, that all contributed in between two wars. Not necessarily the beginning of World War II, but in between two wars. All the famous characters, all the unsung heroes and heroines, all the people who have been left behind, those that have been elevated, you know, those that have been thrust into something that is completely alien to them, you know, and how they've had to adapt, how they've had to fight for what they believe in, how they've had to, you know, see all of their comrades or their family members or their friends die, you know, in all of these mini wars, if I can say that. And yeah, it's been very interesting, you know, hearing all of these stories and all these accounts, and, you know, also the picture quality of the photos and the videos that have been used in the documentaries by TimeGhost History. Really, the dedication to work has been exceptional, I must admit. And of course, with Indian Idol, sometimes coming in the picture with, you know, like with a theme, like he's running with a theme. If he wants to, or if, for instance, if he's speaking about something about the French, he would come there with a French attire. He would speak a little bit of French here and there. He would have a hat on, you know, or he would be drinking wine or something like that. You know, he would try to entertain us in that way, in the beginning of the video and also towards the end of the video. And of course, always having a cheers and then drinking. Yeah, it's been really good with Indian Idol. And guys, hopefully you guys also enjoyed it. I hope you guys also continue watching TimeGhost History YouTube channel and their videos. But for me, currently, like I've discussed about this in the beginning of the video, I am still deciding whether I'm going to continue with the American, or should I say I'm going to start with the American Civil War, or I'm going to start with Homefront, made by the YouTube channel World War II. Yes, presented by Anna Deinhardt. Yes, Deinhardt. Yeah. So I guess you guys will know my decision on that starting next week. Next week, Tuesday. Every Tuesday, it's going to be a documentary session, so definitely you'll see me there. And hopefully I'll see you guys there too for those reaction videos. Guys, Remember, if you want to check out the original video as well as TimeGhost History's YouTube channel, the links are in the description below. If you like my reaction, please give me a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Click on the notification bell if you want to be up to date with my latest videos. And I'll see you guys next week. Okay?